June 18, 1815. Dawn breaks over the Belgian countryside as 200,000 men prepare for the battle that will reshape Europe forever. Napoleon Bonaparte, the master of warfare himself, faces his greatest challenge yet. The Duke of Wellington's forces stretch across the muddy fields near Waterloo, while Prussian reinforcements march through the distance. Muskets gleam in the morning light. Cavalry horses stamp impatiently. Artillery crews prepare their cannons for a day of thunderous destruction. It's the climactic showdown of the Napoleonic Wars, where empires rise and fall on a single battlefield. But let's change one thing. Hovering silently above the morning mist is something that shouldn't exist for another 200 years. A swarm of 500 autonomous military drones, each no bigger than a dinner plate, equipped with artificial intelligence that thinks faster than any human commander and armed with precision explosives that can level buildings. So what happens when the most advanced robotic warfare technology on Earth descends upon history's most legendary battle? Can Napoleon's tactical genius adapt to an enemy that strikes from the sky without warning? Or will 19th century warfare crumble beneath the weight of 21st century innovation? First, let's examine exactly what we've unleashed onto this historic battlefield. A modern military drone swarm isn't just a bunch of flying robots. It's a coordinated hive mind that operates as a single devastating organism. Each individual drone weighs about 2 kilograms, roughly the size of a large bird, but packed with sensors that can identify targets from miles away and explosive payloads equivalent to a hand grenade. They communicate through encrypted networks at the speed of light, sharing intelligence and coordinating attacks faster than any human brain could process. When one drone spots an enemy position, the entire swarm knows about it instantly. They can split into multiple attack formations, converge on targets from different angles, and adapt their tactics in real time based on battlefield conditions. Think of them as 500 mechanical hornets with the tactical intelligence of Napoleon himself, except they never get tired, never feel fear, and never hesitate to sacrifice themselves for the mission. Against this technological terror stands the flower of European military might. Napoleon commands 74,500 battle-hardened veterans who've conquered most of the continent. These aren't raw recruits. They're professional soldiers who've perfected the art of Napoleonic warfare through decades of constant fighting. His Grande Armée includes elite Imperial Guard units that have never tasted defeat, cavalry charges that can shatter enemy lines, and artillery batteries commanded by officers who can drop cannonballs with surgical precision. Wellington's Anglo-Allied forces bring their own deadly expertise. British infantry squares that have proven unbreakable against cavalry charges. Dutch and Belgian troops fighting for their homeland. German soldiers with a grudge against French occupation. The Prussians under Field Marshal Blücher represent some of the most disciplined military formations in Europe, marching in perfect formation with bayonets fixed and colors flying. But here's the terrifying reality. Every weapon on that battlefield requires direct line of sight to be effective. Muskets have a range of maybe 100 meters on a good day. Cannons can reach out to 1,500 meters, but need to see their targets. Cavalry charges are devastating, but require open ground and visible enemies. The drone swarm operates by completely different rules. They attack from 3,000 meters above the battlefield, invisible to the naked eye and silent as death itself. When they strike, it's without warning and with pinpoint accuracy that makes Napoleon's best artillery look like medieval catapults. The battle begins as history intended. Napoleon positions his forces for a frontal assault on Wellington's defensive line. French artillery opens fire, sending iron cannonballs screaming across the muddy fields. British squares form up, presenting walls of bayonets to incoming cavalry. The familiar choreography of 19th century warfare unfolds exactly as it should. Drums beat the advance. Officers shout commands. Smoke from black powder weapons begins to drift across the battlefield like morning fog. For the first hour, this is the Battle of Waterloo, as Wellington and Napoleon would recognize it. Then, the sky begins to hum with an almost inaudible vibration. Soldiers on both sides glance upward nervously, unsure what they're hearing. Some mistake it for distant thunder. Others wonder if it's the sound of approaching Prussian reinforcements. But the noise grows steadily louder, like a swarm of angry wasps ascending from hell itself. Napoleon, studying the battlefield through his spyglass, notices movement in the clouds above Wellington's position. Dark specks that seem to pulse and shift with unnatural coordination. The Emperor lowers his telescope, confusion flickering across his weathered features. These aren't birds. They move with mechanical precision, maintaining perfect formations that no natural creature could sustain. Within seconds, the swarm has positioned itself directly above the center of Wellington's line, hovering at an altitude that renders them nearly invisible to ground forces. The first strike comes without ceremony or declaration. 20 drones detach from the main formation and dive toward the British artillery positions like metallic falcons. Each one has already calculated wind speed, target velocity, and optimal detonation points using sensors that can measure distance to the centimeter. The gun crews never see them coming. Explosions tear through Wellington's battery positions with surgical precision. Cannons that took hours to position are reduced to twisted metal in seconds. Artillerymen who survived Salamanca and Vitoria are vaporized before they can even scream. The sound reaches the French lines 3 seconds later, a series of sharp cracks that echo across the battlefield like the world's deadliest thunderclap. Wellington's horse rears in terror as smoke columns rise from his artillery positions. His officers stare in shock, unable to comprehend what just happened. These weren't cannonballs or cavalry charges. The explosions came from above with no warning, no incoming fire to track or dodge. The Iron Duke, veteran of dozens of battles, finds himself facing something completely outside his military experience. Meanwhile, the drone swarm has already adapted its tactics. Battlefield analysis indicates the French represent the larger threat, so 300 units pivot toward Napoleon positions while 200 remain focused on the Anglo-Allied forces. Napoleon's Grande Armée faces their first taste of 21st century warfare as the swarm descends like a mechanical plague. The Imperial Guard, Napoleon's elite troops, who've never known defeat, scatter as explosions tear through their ranks. These are soldiers who've marched in Russian winters and Egyptian deserts, who've charged Austrian cannons and British squares, but they're utterly helpless against an enemy that strikes from an impossible angle. Cavalry horses bolt in panic as riders struggle to control mounts that have never encountered anything like the high-pitched whine of diving drones. Infantry formations that have held firm against massed cavalry charges dissolve into chaos as men realize their muskets are useless against targets they can barely see. When the smoke finally clears over the Belgian countryside, the answer becomes brutally clear. 500 years of military tradition lie shattered alongside the broken formations of Europe's finest armies. Napoleon's tactical genius, Wellington's defensive expertise, and Blücher's disciplined Prussians all prove meaningless against an enemy that rewrites the fundamental rules of warfare. The drone swarm would stand victorious not through superior numbers or braver hearts, but through the simple reality that 19th century weapons cannot engage 21st century threats. History's greatest generals would fall to an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't reach, and couldn't understand, proving that sometimes the most decisive battles are won before the first shot is ever fired.